Hi, welcome to another episode of the Out of Office Club. Today is all about how to work while you're traveling because I've been doing this now for 2 years. I've definitely made some mistakes, and there's usually two kinds of people that ask me about this. And one group thinks that I must not work very much because I'm always traveling and I always post these nice pictures. And when I am working on those pictures, I'm at a cafe or a nice beach. So I must not be working very well or very much, which is really nice. And then the other group of people ask me how I do it and tell me that they could never because it would be too messy and too difficult to focus and I wouldn't actually get any work done. And both of those kind of opinions or questions are very valid. But today I want to talk about the reality of what it is like to work online or and to work while you're traveling. So, first of all, the fact that people think that I must not work very much, it's I always think it's quite funny because I understand it. All you see online, and not just of me, but also probably other digital nomads, is you see the fun pictures of us kind of traveling, being in nice places, working from nice cafes or spots. But I can tell you that is not reality. I do sometimes work from really, really beautiful places, but usually I am just sat in my Airbnb or in my apartment and I work there the whole day by myself, alone. I don't go out, I don't do anything. So, and of course, I do work a lot because I do need to or want to maintain my lifestyle. And I've made that, as expensive or cheap as I want because it all depends on how you want to travel. But yeah, I do want to maintain that and I have to maintain that. So I work quite a lot. I am a brand designer. I used to work in marketing, but right now it's brand design. So I'm constantly working on client projects, bringing in new clients, and of course also doing my own marketing and work. And all of that adds up. It can be stressful. So in reality, I usually sit at home. Also, because working from all those beautiful places, yes, that sounds great, but generally, the Wi-Fi is maybe not that great. You do get distracted a little bit more. So I prefer to just work in my Airbnb. That's why I'm usually make sure that it's got good Wi-Fi, and I work from there. And that's what most of my days look like. But I can guarantee you, I do work a lot. It is just not really shown on the internet. I mean, a picture of me working in my Airbnb is not as interesting as a picture of me on top of some mountain. So it's also not what I post. It's the reality of my day to day, but it's not really what you see online. So maybe that is something that I have to start posting more. But yeah, I do work a lot to try and finance traveling. And to me, that is worth it, but it's not as fancy as you might see online. And then there's other people who say they could never do it, who say it's too stressful, too kind of distracting. And also that I understand, but of course there are things that you can do to make it easier for yourself and to make it work. And of course my tips are not going to work for everyone, but I think that they are helpful. And I also want to say you can make it easy for yourself. If you know you can't focus in cafes, then don't work from there. It's, it's not that hard. Plus, of course, you're traveling and working, but if you travel very slowly and for a long period of time, there isn't as much pressure on you to go and explore every day. So then just sitting there and working for a couple hours and then relaxing and doing whatever, it doesn't feel rushed and it doesn't feel pressured. And to be honest, for me, sometimes that pressure does help me. If I know, hey, I can't work tomorrow because I'm going on a trip or I'm flying or I've booked a tour, then that gives me more motivation to the days before work harder. So it's all about, I think, a bit of the mindset and the perspective that you have on the whole topic. But there are a couple things that I've struggled with when I started working fully remote and online while traveling. The main one, of course, is Wi Fi. it is the one thing that you definitely need when you work online. It's essential. And it is not always that easy to find good Wi-Fi. I've really, really struggled with that sometimes. I've had to cancel meetings because I couldn't find it. Or even then, when I did find it, for example, when I was in Sri Lanka, I had an important meeting. Everything was fine. Wi-Fi was amazing. I had a quiet spot. I was ready. I had my headphones, like charging. Everything was good. And then the electricity cut out for about an hour and a half. And yeah, that was not pretty. And then the only thing you can do is either work on data. So I highly, highly recommend getting a good data plan, or canceling the meeting. And that's what I did then, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that meeting just on data because I didn't have a very good signal then. But those things happen and they're really, really frustrating and they're very stressful. But yeah, Wi-Fi is always a bit of a risk. And then, of course, there is me messing up times because of the time zones. So I would be either an hour too early or an hour too late to a meeting. Luckily, too late usually or hasn't happened yet, just because, of course, it's getting a lot easier to kind of manage that, especially with invites that go straight to your calendar. But it can be a bit tough to organize the meetings and go, oh, I have time at 11 a.m. Like, well, what time is that where you are at? That gets a bit confusing, but even that is manageable. And the longer you stay in a country, the more you know, oh, if it's this time here, it's this time for my clients. Then I've definitely had to get better at being disciplined. I think that is probably the toughest part. I think you'll have that anyway when you do work for yourself as a self-employed or as a freelancer. You're going to have to be disciplined because no one's going to tell you to do your work. And I can tell you that might sound a lot tougher and scary than it is. It is not. For me, yes, of course, it can be difficult to be disciplined, but I know that there are people waiting for my work. It might not be a boss or a manager who's demanding it of me, but my clients do expect me to be there. And of course, it is a bit more flexible because I do set my own times and deadlines, but still, there is someone waiting for me to do that work. So to me, that discipline is more about scheduling my time well. I think it's more time management that I struggled with a lot at the beginning because I would do the work, but sometimes I would do it a bit too late, or I'd not really think through about how long a task would take me. So I would be out exploring, thinking, oh, I'm just going to work for an hour and I'll be done. And then that turned into 3 hours. And next thing you know, I'm working till 3 a.m. because I've managed my time poorly. So that is something to also definitely keep in mind. You do need to be somewhat disciplined. Not overly disciplined. I don't have some crazy routine. I'm not super strict, but I do know, okay, sometimes I have to miss out on something because I have to go and work. And the next thing I think is mainly distraction. I think that's something a lot of people have also told me, like, oh, I'd be so distracted. Yeah, that happens, especially if you're working from cafes or in co-working places, or maybe even your Airbnb isn't that quiet. Then those distractions can definitely have an impact on your work. But I think you get used to that. I can only compare it to when you work in an office and people are constantly walking past and saying things and talking and there's noise. You get used to it. Plus, a noise canceling headphone has saved me so many times. I will not travel without my headphones. It is the solution to working from anywhere, I would say. And again, you get used to it. And once you're kind of focused and you've got your headphones on and you're working, it's not that easy to get distracted. So, what do I do when I do need to really do a lot of work and I want to focus and I want to make sure that I get my work done and I'm productive? Um, First thing I do just to get ahead of any Wi-Fi problems is that I'll make sure that the Airbnb had good Wi-Fi. So I'll either ask the host to send me a screenshot of the Wi-Fi speed, or I make sure to read the reviews really well. You can, especially I know on Airbnb and I think on Booking as well, you can in the search bar kind of type in what you're looking for in the review. So you just do Wi-Fi or internet, and then people will tell you how fast the Wi-Fi is. That is really helpful. And I often also make sure that I know if there's a co-working around where I'm going to stay, because I mean, co-workings are made to work from, so they will have good Wi-Fi. You don't really have to doubt that. That's why they're there. If they have bad Wi-Fi, no one would come. So that to me is a really, really good option, just in case my Airbnb actually doesn't have that great Wi-Fi, or even if just, I don't know, it cuts out, it doesn't work, anything happens, I can go to this co-working place. Plus, I make sure I have data. I personally use an eSIM because then I don't have to mess around with physical SIM cards, and I can get new data whenever it's empty. I think that is definitely a bit more expensive than buying the physical SIMs in each country, but to me, that is 100% worth it because it just takes away a lot of the stress and management. And next thing I highly recommend is finding some of the tools that you like to use while working. For me, for example, I use Notion every single day. I use that to manage all of my work projects, my clients, my administration, even my travel plans, my life. Everything is in Notion. So I highly recommend using that. Then, of course, I make backups of everything that I do on my laptop that goes straight to the cloud. So I don't have to worry if anything happens with my laptop, I still have all my data. And what else do I use? Probably Google Drive, I use a lot. I make sure I have separate emails, calendars, anything to kind of keep me organized. Because I think that is something that I've struggled with too. Help yourself be really organized, because then it's also going to be easier to focus. If you know exactly what you're working on, where you're going to find it, what your next steps are, it will be easier to go and sit down and do some work. With that, I can also really recommend to get in the habit of either every evening before you go to bed or in the morning when you wake up, writing down everything you have to do. Right? I write down everything just to get it out of my head, especially in the evenings. And then in the morning, I'll pick out the couple things that I really have to get done that day. It's easy, especially when you work for yourself, to look at all of your tasks and feel demotivated or overwhelmed. And that's why I'll choose the ones that are most important for that day, the ones I really have to get done. And then once those are done, I'll see how I feel and what other tasks I can do. Because usually by the time that I finish those, I have motivation to keep going. And I think to continue on that, that is also why co-working places work so well. Because when you get there, even if you don't feel so motivated, everyone around you is working, and that inspires and motivates you as well. I think that works just super well. Seeing other people work. I've even sometimes called with a friend who also had work to do, and then we didn't even talk to each other, but we had our camera on, so we saw each other, and then we both just worked. Those are also some really good, I think it's called buddy doubling. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but that also really helps. Finding someone, a friend, who also has some tasks to do and wants to video call for an hour to get some work done. But yeah, I do have to say, I know that working while traveling might seem very kind of messy and overwhelming, and like there's way too much happening to focus. But it all depends on how you manage your time, how you travel, and kind of finding what works for you. I work really well in the evenings. I know that I've always had. So usually my mornings are slow. I feel demotivated. And then in the afternoon, that's when I start feeling inspired and motivated, and I'll do a lot. So if I can, I'll do a bit of exploring in the morning or take a bit of a slower morning and then work all evening. That works really well for me. Again, also noise cancelling headphones, having the right tools, but it doesn't have to be stressful. And that's also why the slow traveling just helps so much. You have time to work. It isn't that stressful. If you're not going on tours or changing accommodation every 3 days or flying to different countries, it is easier to take some time to just sit down and do work. I'm not out and traveling every single day and exploring most of my days. I'm just at home working. And a lot of people don't see that, but that is the reality of it. So I really, really enjoy that as well. I like working alone. I like working from the road. So it works for me. And I can still really recommend it to other people anyway. There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. Anyway, I think that is all on the working and traveling part. Again, it is not always easy, and you do have to be a bit more disciplined and organized as well, because no one else is going to do that for you. And you do have to go and sit down and work, and no one's going to tell you to go and work. So, yes, that is sometimes a bit hard, but I think if you have enough sense of responsibility and if you also like your work, that helps a lot. It is not that hard. So I hope that was helpful to some of you who are worried about combining work and travel, because I think it is really doable for anyone. And again, it is worth it. I'd rather sit in my Airbnb in another country and work really hard for a week, but then on my day off, I'm able to explore that country. And that's why I think it's so amazing. If you want to know more about what it is like to work online, or maybe even how to start for yourself, then I am launching a course, a digital nomad course, which is all about solo travel, working online, how it works, how to start, what to do. And it will be free for the first month. It's already live, but it's still free for a couple more, I think 2 more weeks. So if you want the course, then go to my Instagram. I'll put a link there, or wherever you're watching this, I'll put a link. Definitely, anyway, follow me on social media, because that's where I'll share a lot more travel tips and fun moments. Then wherever you're watching or listening, please subscribe and like the video, because that helps a lot, or like the episode. And then I hope this was helpful. If you do have any questions, just send me a DM or leave a comment, and I'll do my best to answer. And then I hope to see you again next week. Thank you so much. Bye bye.